Now I'd like to present the Humanitarian and Social Responsibility Awards. The Humanitarian Award is presented to an esteemed individual whose ability and position, either personal, corporate, foundation, or politically based, has enabled him or her to do work reaching into and providing vitally needed services to a community. This year, it is going to Jonathan Ryan, the CEO and president of the Refugee and Immigrant Center for Education and Legal Services, RAICES, in Texas. We're honoring Mr. Ryan for his dedication to the inalienable right of all people to migrate in order to better their way of life, and the visionary leadership that he has provided at RAICES to carry out its mission to defend the rights of immigrants and refugees, empower individuals, families, and communities, and advocate for liberty and justice. Mr. Ryan is an immigrant himself, as his family came from Ireland to find a better life. He has a deep understanding of what it means to migrate to another country and to have the opportunity to advance one's condition in life. He has taken RAICES from an organization of 4 employees helping 75 children to one with 300 employees, serving as the largest immigration legal services organization in the country, helping an average of 20,000 immigrants and asylum seekers per year. They have expanded their vision and mission to include advocacy in order to change the policies that adversely affect migrants and asylum seekers, and in understanding that needs extend beyond legal assistance. They also offer temporary housing and social services. The abundance of activities that are making a difference are in large part due to the deep sense of vision and mission that Mr. Ryan has provided over the last 18 years. Jonathan, the Group Foundation is pleased to recognize your work with our 2021 Humanitarian Award.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thanks, Daryl. Thanks, Tom Stone out there for nominating me, and for Dr. Feynman for your work, and all those who've worked with us over the past couple of years. I'm really honored to receive this recognition and to be with you all, especially now that I'm moderately more secure in thinking that this is an award and not the most asymmetric intervention in history. I believe so. And I know I was given about 3 minutes to speak, and I'll try to be brief. I know I'm speaking with therapists, so I'll try to make it 2 minutes and 50 seconds. I'll also try to keep it brief because, I mean, as I look at your wonderful faces, I just think, what is this costing me? I mean, and I'm just talking about the electricity, people. I'm in Texas here, so it's been quite a week. But I really am honored and humbled as you described the work that RAICES does. It's really overwhelming. It's not me, it is the 300 people who have done it. And our growth is really not as much as I would love it to be a kind of some symptom of my work. It is an absolute symptom of the need and the crisis that our country and our world is in. That is the reason that we have grown, is because we're trying to meet an immensely asymmetrical need. I was going to try to say something pithy in these few minutes, but this has been a week where we've really had a chance to sit and reflect. I would just say a couple of things for those of you who do talk to people who do this kind of work. We do extremely human work. The dehumanization, the investment into dehumanization in the industry and the work that we do is extreme, from the uniforms that people wear, ourselves included, to the words we use. You will never find a member of ICE referring to someone in detention as a person, their bodies. You'll rarely find a humanitarian that calls a person in detention a person. We'll call them detainees. And I don't know what a detainee is, or when you become one, or when do you stop being a detainee. The places that we appear, I mean, right now we're all in these squares, but even in real life, you never see a whole human being. As an immigration attorney, you see parts of people in squares, behind desks, behind windows, in the cells. It's like participating in some bizarre cuckoo clock where everyone becomes just a fixture of the system. And you can find yourself really feeling like the only actual human dealing with just so many characters or so many projections of the system. And it makes me reflect on, that book Catcher in the Rye and Holder Caulfield in the New York Museum, just looking at those frozen characters. And that's just such a dangerous place for us to all have gotten to. And it's not just the humanitarians that feel like the only humans, it's everybody in their own way that feels like the only human, and that every other person around them is just some kind of part of the system. That's going to continue in this new presidency. And what I think is going to be really hard for people like me and people who do this work is that we're going to immediately flip back from being humanitarians to those over politicized people who just can never be satisfied. We're going to continue to deal with the same people suffering the same injustices at the hands of the same government, frankly, that has been doing it for years. Almost everyone I know who works for the government has worked for immigration since it was the INS. Those are all the same people, and things are going to continue very status quo. We've already seen it. It's very difficult to be a human rights activist and fighter when everybody thinks that the problem has been solved. And so you're going to be seeing the psychological hit as people like me, who are maybe more jaded, particularly those who have many people who have come to our industry in the last few years, who don't know that when politics change, things don't. And so we're going to see a huge bottoming out of many of the frontline workers. I would just also finish by saying the past is the future. I have really been a manager, and really RISIS has grown working with Central American refugees. Most of my personal work is working with people from Somalia. When I grew up hearing about Somalia, it was the dark ages, it was the past. Watching that movie, it was just an unrecognizable place. As I actually got to know people from Somalia, my age, who were talking about what happened to them, they were people like me who had their civilization and their society ripped away from them. The people went into the cities, they dropped their tribal identities, they became merchants, they dropped their tribal identities and ways, and they became like us, living in cities, concerned about vacations and amenities. And they threw out the people who clung to their guns and religion into the country. And then those people came out from the country, and they came with their guns and they killed everybody. And when I started to hear their stories, I started to see Somalia and the stories of the refugees I talked to, not as the past, but as the future. We've been preparing for climate change to become the next big issue in climate migration. And when will this issue come back to us? The United States is going to be the second most impacted country in the world by climate migration. And here I've just experienced a week where I felt like a refugee here in Texas, completely cut off from any protection from the government that is supposed to protect me. We talk about being a nation of immigrants. There are about 60 million displaced people in the world right now. In mid-century, there will be more than 1 billion displaced people on Earth. And it will be climate that will be moving people. And it won't be people from around the world. It'll be people from around this country too. We're not a nation of immigrants. We are a planet of refugees. And when we can kind of grasp that, that the past is the future, and the suffering that we see around the world is, it may not feel like our suffering, it is our suffering. And we're going to feel it more and more and more. And hopefully we can deal with it before we start to feel it, because by then it'll be too late. So I thank you so much for the work you're doing and for this recognition. I know that you guys have a very nice bell. I heard that was very polite, and it looks like I've avoided it. Bells might work for therapists. I'm an immigration activist. We use air horns when people go too long. So I'll give myself the air horn, and thank you all very much for the recognition, and keep up the good work. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jonathan.